Welcome to LC Screen Talk. My name is Larry, and today I'm going to do a comparison of A Game of Thrones, Book 1 from A Song of Ice and Fire, against Game of Thrones, Season 1 from HBO. Here on the channel, I am currently reacting to each and every episode of the hit television show Game of Thrones with my friends Tyler and Alyssa. Since I have seen the entire series before, most seasons I've seen several times at this point, I thought it would be fun to spice it up and finally delve into the written material of the books, the material from George R.R. Martin himself. Now, I have not read the books up to this point because I was basically waiting for some sort of concrete evidence that he would actually finish his story. I wanted another book to come out, or at least a release date or concrete evidence that the next book was coming and he was already on work for the final set of the story. Unfortunately, we still haven't gotten any of that. I have zero faith that we are getting Winds of Winter. I don't know that we're ever going to get any more books from George R. R. Martin himself. So that ending we got for the TV show might be the only ending we get. However, I am a huge fan of the TV series, or at least most of it. It was my favorite television series up until season 8. Yes, I was even able to deal with season 7, but that last one really killed me. But as I'm rewatching, I wanted to add more complexity, more layers to my own viewing experience. So I will be doing comparisons as we move throughout the series. And here we are starting with the first series versus the first book. And I have to say, many of us have said it, and I think it holds very true. Dan and Dave, well, they botched the ending. However, they're really good when it comes to adapting material, because they adapted that first book into one season of television expertly well. Most all of the big points and the moments that you are waiting for happen in the books just as they do in the television series. Most of that great dialogue is added in during those moments. And I think it's a great adaptation of the first book, honestly. And I'm actually impressed that they were able to take all of this material and so faithfully and concisely adapt it into one season of a television series. It's great. What can I say? Of course, there's more. That's a big novel, and there's a lot more character work that goes into the book. But they got the essence of what was happening really well into the show. However, there's one storyline that does get altered to the point where it makes a difference, and that is the story of Daenerys Targaryen. First of all, George R. R. Martin has already expressed his disappointment that her first sexual encounter with Khal Drogo was made to be non-consensual in the show, because in the books, it starts out kind of non-consensual, but she makes the decision to make it consensual before it happens, and in the show, that doesn't take place. Furthermore, as we get toward the latter parts of her story, everything around Khal Drogo and Mirri Maz Duur wasn't really handled that well in the show, in my opinion. In the books, Khal Drogo's wound comes from these people in this village who fire something off at him, and he gets injured in the act, not from a self-inflicted macho man type of injury. But from there, Mirri Maz Duur helps him and gives him specific instructions on what he cannot do. He has to endure the pain, no milk of the poppy. And from there, we are explicitly told that Khal Drogo ignored her and did not take her advice. Thus, her wound festered and got worse. In the show, Khal Drogo injures himself. Mirri Maz Duur helps him. The next time that we see Khal Drogo, he is on a horse, falling off, looking very ill. Ultimately, both stories convene with Daenerys calling in Mirri Maz Duur to perform the blood magic to save Khal Drogo's life. He comes back as a vegetable. Daenerys has to kill him. and we get that great speech from Mary Mazdor before Daenerys ultimately burns her at the stake. Such a minor change, yet it really changes the complexity of what happens there. The show doesn't have Miri give him the instructions. She doesn't run down what he needs to do. No milk with a poppy. We don't get the sense that Khal Drogo has defied orders, thus his own death is purely on his own shoulders. It is his own fault through and through. The show merely shows her treat him and then him falling into a bad state. And then couple that with what she says in the final episode about how they tore down her place of worship and how vengeful she was against Daenerys' child and Khal Drogo and the Dothraki for what they had done to her people, leaves it wide open to interpretation that Miri Mazdor may have killed Khal Drogo herself. She didn't really try to heal him when she fixed up his wound. In the books, very clear, she did. She tried to help him, and he didn't listen. And this key difference, honestly, leads to a very different path in how you view what Daenerys does at the end of the season. Through the show, this woman potentially acted really spitefully and killed her husband. Then, Daenerys didn't follow the rules, or rather, Jorah, the writers, didn't follow the rules and brought her into the tent when they weren't supposed to. But she then gives that description of her child being rotted from the inside with flesh falling off, giving that speech of your son was not innocent because he was going to trample nations and kill more people. Your Khal killed people, and you didn't save me. All of which leads to Miri Mazdor coming across as quite a vengeful persona towards Khal Drogo. Someone who killed her husband, if she didn't kill her son, very well rubbed it in Daenerys' face, leading to her being burnt at the stake. It seems much more rational through the show's point of view, in my opinion. However, in the books, you have to take Khal Drogo's death completely off the table, since that was of his own doing purely. Then, we bring in the child, and she was told, nobody's to come into this tent. Daenerys was brought in, and the child was lost in the process. Once again, not really Miri Mazdor's fault at all. So that just leaves that final discussion, and it leaves Daenerys in a very interesting moral dilemma. A dilemma in which she is angry because, yes, she in her own mind still perceives this woman as the person who killed her child, particularly, but she's not, and she's not the one who killed her husband either. However, it doesn't let Miri Mazdor off the hook either, because no matter which way you slice it, Miri does take out a certain vengeful spirit on a woman who did her best to save her. Daenerys did what was within her own power when it was within her power to spare those women, and Miri still had quite a vengeful attitude toward Miri Mazdor. That brings us back around one more time to a difference in the book and in the show. The show just shows the defiant Miri Mazdor saying she won't scream and very defiant as she is put to the stake. In the book, however, she gives a monologue saying, "Let me help you, Queen. Let me help you, silver-haired woman." Once again, showing a bit of a softer side to Miri Mazdor that wants to help Daenerys in other ways. So for me, this is the biggest departure from book 1 to season 1, is that they sucked a lot of the moral dilemma out of the scenario. It seemed much more reasonable for Daenerys to just kill this woman, because in most senses, through the television lens, Miri Mazdor was in the wrong. But in the books, it's much more gray than that, and there's many more subtleties that take place. The only other big differences I personally felt did anything were small time differences. Like Jon running away from the Night's Watch. We get a lot more about why his Night Watch brothers were able to catch up to him. The show just seems like, what was he doing? But the book tells you what he was doing. Of course, Samwell comes along, but I actually think that was a positive reinforcement for the show to make. In addition, we get Pycelle, his addition of faking his ailments, not present in the book, at least that first book. And then we get these dialogue moments that take place over sex that were definitely gratuitous. But some of the minor changes I did enjoy, like Renly and Loris, their moment that they have in season 1. Most of the changes are pretty inconsequential for the most part when it comes to this first book being translated to the first season. Outside of Daenerys and Mirri Maz-Duur, everything else pretty much goes as it needed to go, with a little bit of added flair. Sometimes that flair was definitely not needed, a la the Roz sex scene as Littlefinger just spouted off dialogue and exposition. Other times, I enjoyed it, such as Renly and Loris talking about Renly wanting to be king. So that was it. That was my main takeaway of the big difference between book 1 and season 1, and how that ultimately impacted the story that took place. I would love to hear everybody else's evaluation of how they translated A Game of Thrones to Game of Thrones, the TV show. Do you agree with my assessment? Do you disagree? And certainly, if you think I missed something that was heavily changed and really altered something in the first season, please leave that in the comment section down below. I cannot wait to dive deeper into these books with y'all. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so you are always up to date on my latest videos, and make sure you head on over and check out our Game of Thrones reactions. I love you all so much for your continued support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!